was fantastic.
Thank you.
Absolutely fantastic. A round of applause, everyone. Survival Billboard. I have a few questions for you. I hope you're not going to be extremely grilled, but on a very personal level, what motivates you and the team?
Oh, that's a really good question, actually. I think what motivates the team at Momentum largely is we talk a lot about total brand experience. We talk a lot about being fearless. I think what motivates me and the team that I lead certainly is around fearless creativity. I want creativity at the absolute heart of everything that goes on at the agency. And when you push people in that way, but also set them up to be fearless, to think differently, to not have boundaries, that's what bounces me out of bed in the morning.
Fearless creativity for the team. So I'd really like to know, is there a secret to motivate the team? As in, do you have everyday new huddles, let's get creative today? Or anything that we can do to get our teams motivated? Because most of us here are entrepreneurs with our own teams. So it's one thing having a vision. It's another thing leading a team with a vision. Yeah. So anything you do in terms of practice?
I sat in this room earlier on and I watched, was it Rob? Yes. Yeah, do his presentation. And it was, I tell you, the one thing that really stuck in my mind was he talked about that childlike curiosity and how you, as a creative or as an artist, have to keep that sense of the childlike kind of sensibility. And we try and do that in the agency as much as we can. We all do this job for a reason that we don't want to go and work in banking or something like that. It's creative, it should get you pumped up. So I tried to make sure with my teams that we get them out. I thought one of the things that I saw on Rob's video was he goes out, he expresses himself, he's curious, he goes and has a look round. If there's one thing I would say to anyone in this room, or that I say to my team on almost a weekly basis, is get out and see the world, be inspired, go and see things. You are not going to be creative sat at your desk, sat behind a glass wall in an office. Just isn't going to happen. So we're very fortunate in the position of our office in London that we're around amazing art galleries and exhibitions and theatre. And I tell you what, if one of my creative team want to disappear off and go backstage to a theatre for the afternoon and get inspired, then that's a good thing, I think. I think that kind of inspiration about getting out and seeing the world, and don't think you're going to be creative by just sat in the office, or with greatest respect to Google, who were up here, you don't find every answer on the internet.
We call it Google Baba over here, because everything is like, source this, look for this, everyone's on the internet looking for it. Yeah. I think that's a very valid point, because we look at employees, or we look at our team as ROI. And we think the more time they spend in the office, the more productive they are. So you've actually burst that myth right now.
I think the obsession with ROI, I understand why, but we talk a lot about ROX, return on experience, and we talk about that to our clients, return on experience. We talk about having to prove that with campaigns. But return on experience also from an internal perspective is about people's experience of their job, about I talk about people's careers at Momentum rather than their job, because actually I want them to have multiple careers. I want them to enjoy and thrive at what they do continuously, because it's an exciting and vibrant industry to work in.
Wonderful, thank you. Few more, just a few more. How do you know it's the right idea? Look, beautiful, simple idea. In a world of complexity, especially when you think the big buzzwords of being big and doing big and living large, the idea is fairly small and simple. So how do you know that small and simple? So first of all, first question, how do you know the small, you get rid of all the, the layers, and go down and hum it down to a small and brilliant idea? And number two, how do you know it's the right idea?
My God, if I knew the answer to both of those questions, I'd be retired and been living on my own island probably by now. I think I genuinely think that I suppose you only know it's the right idea, I suppose, once it's been executed, but you can be super confident in that idea. I think also the acid test of Is it answering the brief? Is it solving a business issue? Is it going to be fun and engaging for a consumer? Is it, because if there's one thing that drives me mad, it's my team or seeing other teams come and pitch an idea because it has the latest technology, you know, and it's just like, but why? What's the added value? So I think, irregardless of technology, irregardless of a creative idea, if you can boil it down to that literal 1 or 2 sentences of what the nub of it is, then I think you can begin to build on those ideas. But I always stress with my team, less. How can you, and even when we pitch to clients, we pitch in a very compact, distinct way, which is all about minimizing the amount of information we give, minimizing the creativity. I would rather go in with 3 fantastic visuals or a video than 1,000 pieces of, you know, pieces of creative that are just layering a wall and being wallpaper, really.
Wonderful. Let's see, that you preempted my next question.
Okay.
You're reading my mind here.
Maybe I'm reading them upside down.
I've got it all written down. Most important question, actually. Like you said, 2 vital pieces of information that go out to client. Is there any other magic potion that you have that you manage to sell these brilliant ideas? How do you manage to enable your clients to buy into your ideas? I'm sure there's passion, and I'm sure there's information, but there may be one more ingredient we're missing out.
Yeah, I do think with the right clients, and the Xbox client was a great example, they want to feel part of that ideation process. So you take it so far and bring them in. I mean, when I was starting out in this industry was known as the tissue session and things like that. I think sometimes those things can go by the wayside, and actually they're an incredibly valuable tool to bring the clients closer, to make them vested in an idea. But I also just think that when you're selling it, people buy, it sounds corny, people buy people. You have to have the right team on it. You have to have your pitch team geared to go. Passion and enthusiasm comes across in spades to clients. And even if the idea isn't quite right, if the team is bought, you know that you can work with the idea as a client. And I've sat on the other side of the fence as a client too and brought agencies in. And I've seen the power of individuals and what they can do to transform your business. So also, if there are ways, I try and get my team into ways of a winning mentality. And there are certain things that we do, whether it's the running order of a presentation, it's how we construct teaser videos, it's how we start or finish those presentations. It might be that you guys have seen it 100 times, but to that client, it is fresh for the first time. And actually, never underestimate the power of a good pitch. And if you stumble across it and it is like a piece of pure gold, then replicate it and make sure also that the people in your agencies know what winning mentality is like. Because I've started it now in the UK, where we end up with having gone from 1 or 2 pitch teams who would be able to win business to, you know, a good half a dozen. And that strength in depth really does give you an enormous amount of power.
Thank you. See, you're doing very well. Finish line now.
Okay.
How many people did it take to put that together?
The Xbox Billboard, I suppose, in its entirety, if you counted everyone up, you're looking at in excess of 100 people. However, I would say the nucleus of that team, if you really boiled it down, you're probably looking at the initial group of about 12 people. And I think this notion of getting the right individuals in a room at the start of a process and then bringing in experts, I mean, it's probably, it probably touched somewhere from 100 to 120 people working on that piece of business. Not as many perhaps as you think, but the right caliber of people can perform creative miracles.
12 people, a dozen. Oh, wonderful,
That's
a
it.
dozen, wow, a dozen. Last question, and then I'm going to hand it over to the crowd. Any specific pieces of information that you'd like to give us? Anything you'd like to share of what made Survival Billboard the success it is? What do you think it was that made it the success it is?
I genuinely think that you know the old adage of you can outspend or you can outsmart, and I think This campaign is a case of being able to outsmart the opposition. Microsoft and the Xbox client didn't have the biggest budgets for their games launch during that period, but they were smarter, they were braver, they pushed the envelope a little bit more. And I just think, listen, I'm set up here as somebody who runs an agency, so I'm never going to turn down an enormous budget if it comes your way. But I do think sometimes we have a responsibility as an agency and as an industry to be able to steer clients to use their budgets in the right way. And if they can do that and get that kind of result and then have more budget to do something else and be braver still. The wonderful thing on this kind of campaign comes out when you do get the plaudits, it does work, it is transformational for their business, and suddenly you've got a client who's willing to back you to be braver the next time as well.
Oh, that's lovely. So the more you stretch the dollar, the more the client commits to you. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah,
it's interesting.
So. Yeah.
Because usually you try to get as many dollars into the bank, and then you think and hope that the next time you win the pitch. Oh, wonderful. That's a lovely perspective. I'm going to keep note of that. So anyone, any questions? Yes, Rajesh.
I'll take it to RV.
Fantastic presentation. I have a couple of questions. You spoke about a dozen pitch teams. Can you tell us what compromises a pitch team? That's question number one. Question number two, was Xbox a pitch, or was it like a retainer client and only you were working on the brief? And number three, the number of people who were working and all of that, if you can share the top line number of executing a project like this.
Oh, right. I think, okay, I'll try and remember all of those in the right order. I think I mean, certainly, I'll answer your second question first, actually. In terms of this piece, we do work with Microsoft. They are an engaged client of ours over a number of years. So we are fortunate that this brief was from a retained relationship. But actually, in other areas of our Momentum business, we pitch week in, week out for Microsoft Business as well as global retained pieces of business too. I think your first question...
What's a pitch team?
What's a pitch team?
How many people and what are their jobs and roles?
Yeah. I mean, this one, obviously, it had a lot of complexity around the...
Not this one. Generally, you said you have got a dozen pitch teams. So how many members do a pitch team and what are their roles?
I personally don't like having any more than about 5 or 6 people on a pitch. There's nothing that depresses me more than walking into a room of 20 or 30 people, all of whom want to make themselves heard. And, you know, I mean, there is a room for everyone to play a part, but I believe the nucleus of a pitch team, for my perspective, 5 or 6 people can transform the world, you know, if they're the right 5 or 6 people. At that point, you crack the idea and you bring in experts from around the business. And, you know, Chris, my boss, is sat right there. You know, we've worked on numerous pitches together where suddenly New York will reach out to London, or London, as happened actually recently, London reached out to Delhi for a piece of new business that we've just won, because there was a specific talent in that team that we needed. And we had teams suddenly the next day out in Delhi, out in Mumbai, out in Bangalore, and there is a real strength to that when you can stand in front of a client and talk about that. But the nucleus of that team was very small, but the tentacles of someone like Momentum as an agency stretch far and wide, and that really does become you know, very special for a client.
So these 5, 6 people, what are their job roles? I mean, is there one creative person?
Okay, I get it. Okay, so I would say you've got you've usually got a little power double act of a creative and copywriter. We usually like to make sure we have an experiential producer in the room as well. There is usually an account lead who's keeping us all honest on budget and on time as well. And then I think usually, I mean, I'm usually involved in most of the pitches, but usually also we like to bring in, you know, there will always be a strategist involved, and sometimes just some kind of like wild card maverick free thinker, and who doesn't perhaps sit within the agency, but might be kind of, we run a program, for example, in our Madrid office in Spain called the Godfather program. And the Godfather program is about a series of these incredible talents from all over the world of art, music, literature. And they're used like non-execs, essentially, that come in and help on pitches. And that's an incredibly powerful thing to have up your sleeve as well.
All right. And if you can share the top line number of the survival, the top line number, the billing, how much did it cost Xbox?
How much did it cost? Oh, okay, to the client. The budget, I'll give you an idea. I mean, the budget there, I believe, went from like $1 million execution down to about $600,000. And they're up against people who are spending $5 million, you know, in the same week trying to execute mass media on it. So global campaign, $600,000. Picks up 52 awards globally already this year.
So not just awards, how did the product fare post the launch? I mean, you won the awards and you got, but Tomb Raider, what did the ROI on?
So actually, in terms of, well, Microsoft play that very close to their chest, but we beat the ROI objectives that we were set for that. And believe me, I know that our client got a very healthy promotion and a pat on the back from his colleagues at Microsoft. So if it doesn't, this again is a really good point actually. You can do all of that, and if it doesn't sell, it doesn't work. So at the end of the day, you can wrap as much chat around advertising, marketing, creative, production as you like, but it has to sell things at the end of the day. And that can be a can of Coke, it can be an Xbox game, but we're in the game of selling, and we don't need to kid ourselves that we're in anything else other than that.
Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was 74 questions. Would we like? We have one more question. Yes. Sorry.
As a small question, you made the idea first and pulled in the brand inside later, or you made the idea for the brand first? Because entire visual, what I see, it was more of a giving a message. I think Xbox came in the picture later, what I felt. So the idea built the first, or you made the idea according to the brand side?
It's a good question. I mean, in this occasion, genuinely, the idea came after Xbox approached us. And the reason, remember that you could say, well, maybe another brand could do an outdoor piece of media in that way and things like that. And people have been brave with outdoor billboards before. But remember, this was Xbox, it's Tomb Raider, it's Lara Croft type challenges. You know, this is why this thing worked. Obviously, we try to be a world-class event and experiential agency. It's the job of our producers and our creatives to always keep their eyes open to the new developments and new technological advances that are possible. But no, I would hate to ever think we get to the day where we are retrofitting a piece of media or technology and shoehorning it into a brief. Because I think if I was a client, and I should be able to smell that a mile off.